We've proven that it's possible to actually build a driverless system that is safe and reliable in production and then deploy it to customers.
Welcome to Truck Tech. I'm Thomas Wasson. Welcome back also. It's our second episode of the brand new Truck Tech. I am taking the reins from the great Alan Adler. And so we're going to be catching up with everybody. And luckily for me, right as I took over the role, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's 2025, of course, and especially in autonomous trucking, we have the potential for, especially with the new administration and impact and regulations, there's a lot of testing. We have some folks commercializing. There's quite a bit of activity. So let's dive right in and check in with the folks at Kodiak Robotics. They recently spoke at the Consumer Electronics Show, the big event. I didn't unfortunately get to make it, but I will eventually one of these days. And then also they have a really big first to release, especially in regards to commercialization and autonomous trucking. So two really great topics here. Let's welcome our guest here. It's the founder and CEO. It is Don Burnette. Don, pleasure getting to talk to you for the first time, and really happy to have you on the show. I know you've been on quite a few times in the past.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I'm excited for the new journey here and happy to chat.
And let's dive right in, because one of the big things here is let's talk about your first in terms of the race for commercialization. I think that's going to be one of the more breaking news things. It was through a partnership here. It was the first time to deliver a driverless semi-truck. You all also have the first autonomous semi-truck company to generate ongoing revenue. And with this recent thing with Atlas, the first ever customer to launch a commercial delivery operation with driverless trucks. Tell us a little bit about this. I thought the Permian Basin, instead of a rumble in the jungle in Madison Square Garden, all the action right now is going on in the oil sands.
That's right. Texas is where it's at. Yeah, this is an exciting time for Kodiak. It's an exciting time for the industry because it's really an inflection point. We've proven that it's possible to actually build a driverless system that is safe and reliable in production and then deploy it to customers. And that's really one of the proof points that the industry has been waiting many, many, many years for. It's really exciting that we were the first ones to be able to actually deploy a driverless truck to a customer. And in this particular case, as you said, this customer actually owns and operates the vehicle. So it's not Kodiak's fleet that we're sort of licensing out or providing as a service. It's actually Atlas's trucks that they own, they paid for, they bought. We put our technology on it, and then we help them with remote monitoring and upgrades and service and maintenance and that sort of thing. But really, they're responsible for all the logistics. They tell the trucks where to go. The trucks then just go and show up, pick up the loads, drop off the loads at the destination. And all of their control and command that they use on their traditional manual trucks is integrated through software APIs to the autonomous truck. And that's how the coordination works. It really is, it has been an amazing journey for us to get to where we are. For those of you who don't know, I've been in the driverless space for over 15 years. So it's been a long time, but we finally have our first driverless deployment. It's a huge milestone for Kodiak. It's a huge milestone for the trucking industry. It's a huge milestone for the AV industry, autonomous vehicle industry. So we're seeing a lot of exciting headwinds in 2025. You mentioned CES. CES was a great show, lots of buzz, and really excited to now take this product and start deploying it at scale.
And I think the oil sand location is really cool because if I understand correctly, it's almost like the perfect closed loop thing. These are private roads, private locations. The customer is using them as part of, I think it is called the Dune Loop. Let me make sure I've got that right.
Dune Express.
Dune Express. Tell us about how is that something that kind of gives you a leg up? Because a lot of other companies you have to, they're trying to test it on public roads, closed tracks. It almost looks like you're not getting the same kind of application of being out in the wild.
Yeah, so one of the things I want to just cover off in the very beginning, because there's a lot of confusion about this, is that the roads out in the Permian are not actually a closed course, right? They're not actually within a mine. It's not like a big mining area. It's actually a road network. It's a road network that has oncoming traffic. There's pedestrians walking around. There's intersections. There's right of way. There's all the basic rules of the road that you have to contend with. And so the Kodiak driver system certainly has to be what we would call, a fully capable driving stack or software system in order to safely navigate all of the crazy things that can happen with vehicles passing and driving on the shoulder and cows walking across the street, cow guards all throughout the property. So it really is a full driving task. And the service area is 75,000 square miles. So it's not like, it's not a small area. It might even be the largest geographical deployment of driverless vehicles on the planet. I'm not exactly sure about that, but 75,000 square miles of drivable areas is quite substantial. And then you mentioned Dune Express. I mean, this is truly an innovation like the industry has never seen. And of course, I don't want to speak for Atlas, but the general idea is that you have these limitations on public road infrastructure in terms of the weight of the loads that you can carry. I think most trucking folks will be familiar with the 80,000 pound limit as you go all across the country. And that's true out in the Permian as well. And so the Dune Express is effectively a 42 plus mile conveyor belt that Atlas has developed that allows them to move their product, move their sand across the public road infrastructure without ever having to be on the roads, and then into the kind of private domain where there aren't as many weight restrictions. And so you can carry more load in the trailer, right? They can't even fully load a sand trailer when you're driving on public roads. You can fully load a sand trailer. You can add doubles, you can add triples. Really, the sky is the limit when it comes to efficiently delivering. And when you pair that with autonomous systems, now all of a sudden you have a 24/7 business that operates incredibly efficiently, pulls all kinds of loads that you didn't have access to before, and it really increases the value proposition of the business. And that's, we're excited to play our role in that piece of the overall umbrella, but Atlas really is the mastermind behind the logistics that they've implemented. And I think it really is a unique and innovative approach. It's pretty exciting to see. And I believe the Dune Express they just announced that it just came online this month. And so you've got all the perfect ingredients for a hyper efficient logistics business. You've got the conveyor belt, you've got autonomy, you put them together, and we'll see what the possibilities are, but it's looking pretty exciting.
And talking about how the tech works, one of the interesting things I'm hearing about is using like reinforcement learning, generative AI. Well, is there something where being in the location, is it going to continue to gain information to train the AI, or talk to folks who may not be familiar with the AI components just as important as the hardware, making sure it's fine tuned? How are y'all working on that, and how's it fitting into the scheme?
That's a great point, actually. And I love to talk about the technology. I've been in the space as a technologist for so long. Most people don't realize that we have three different sectors that we focus on at Kodiak. We have our long haul over the road business, which most people are familiar with, but we also do military-based ground autonomy. And in the military applications, going into the types of environments that they're excited about, it really means going off-road, going into unstructured places, through the fields, over the dirt, over the mounds, through the sand dunes, across rivers, you name it. They need to move their vehicles through these types of domains. And of course, having ground-based autonomy for them is incredibly important. Now, what this means from an AI perspective is that it has forced us to push our algorithms into environments well beyond highway, right? Everybody likes to talk about how structured highways are and how that makes the problem a lot easier, and it's absolutely true. And so to go to the next level, to actually go into completely unstructured environments where you have no lane markings, no lane lines, you intuitively know where you should drive. You don't want to hit things, and you want to go over the smoothest surfaces you can. So we've had to train the AI systems to think in that way and really demonstrate that behavior in a diverse set of environments. But as a result of that, the system has become a lot stronger. So Kodiak has our industrial application, we have our military application, and we have our over-the-road application is actually one software system. We have one AI neural network system that has been trained across all of the data that we've gathered, millions and millions and millions of miles in all of these diverse set scenarios. And we create a single system that has effectively learned how to bridge between all of these different infrastructure requirements and provide value to whatever the mission profile looks like, whether that's a military mission profile, whether that's an over the road, 20-hour straight drive, or whether that's in the Permian, in the sand country out in the middle of the desert. It's one single system. And AI has seen an explosion over the last couple of years. I would say there's been incremental progress over the last 15 years, but certainly in the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen just an explosion in techniques. We're moving more of our system towards what's referred to as an end-to-end solution. You can think about that as one monolithic, what's called foundation model that drives the understanding from sensor inputs like LiDAR, radar, and camera, and then takes that information and translates it into a plan that the robot can then effectively drive in order to maintain safety and make progress down the road. Now, one important point that I want to emphasize is that this is really all about safety. And when it comes to end-to-end machine learning and AI models, sometimes they can be very difficult to analyze. And that's one of the big critiques and criticisms of AI technology, is that we don't actually know what's going on under the hood. And that's why at Kodiak, we've gone one step further. We have an end-to-end solution that we deploy in our product, but we also back it up with tens of other, what we call neural pathways. So other specific AI systems that we can probe, that we can test, that we can monitor, and that we can validate to ensure that we have proper redundancy and proper coverage of all the different safety systems that we need. So that was a lot of mouthful, but really the AI state of the art has exploded in terms of capabilities. And that's where you're really seeing the systems generalize across all these different environments, and ultimately getting to the level where we can literally hand it off to a customer. It's on them and they just operate it and it just works. It truly is like magic.
And it's kind of like tuning as well. I think one of the things playing catch up and learning the space was that folks are talking about, especially from the safety aspect, they can feed it things like dash cam videos. They can put it in scenarios where accidents occurred to try and guess, see how the model reacts. Is that something where, and I'm kind of curious on this, the recent big gains, is it because there's a large enough data set to finally use to train the model, or has the algorithms and the compute gotten so good that now it can do better reiterations, so to speak, and it knows what to do? Because one thing I learned at the very beginning was some folks were trying to train their AI, and it was like, well, the LiDAR does one thing, the radar does another thing, and the steering and the other components, and then they all have to talk to each other. Is that one of the things, what, in your opinion, being in 15 years in the game, what was kind of like the eureka moment? Was it the data? It's like chicken or the egg, the data or the algorithm?
It's a little of both, actually. So we've went through this phase as an industry, as a research industry, where in the mid-teens, it was really about big data. People realized that you could build these networks and train them on massive data sets, or massive at the time, at least, data sets, and that you could get results that were outperforming anything that we had ever seen before. And so there's this huge craze around building bigger and bigger and bigger data sets. And in our case, that means driving more and more and more miles, gathering that data, and then annotating them to train the system. That had diminishing returns. So towards the end of the decade, we hit sort of a plateau from that perspective. And then what we started to realize is that it became a little bit more about the quality of the data. Right? Do you have the right diversity of the data? Do you have the right labels? Are you using the right techniques to actually train the system? And there was a lot of work put on and emphasis put on the techniques and quality of that data over quantity. And then we pushed on that for a couple more years and realized that there were still a tremendous amount of gains to be had. And that sort of hit a plateau. And that's where we entered the last couple of years, where we now realize that it's both. You need both a massive amount of data and you need a high quality of data. And there's these, modern techniques like auto labeling systems where you train a foundation model without any human intervention on the data set. It's just an automatic process. You feed a bulk load of data, you train a baseline system, and then you can then fine tune that to do specific tasks and specific, get the specific results that you need by using some human annotated data in addition. The next stage of where we're going, and it's really starting to be used today, and you mentioned it in the beginning, is Gen AI. And I think there's a couple schools of thought there. There's a couple different camps where some people are saying we could just use generative AI to train the entire thing end to end through simulation, and you don't ever have to go out and collect millions and millions of miles of data. I think we're solidly on the side of let's have the data as an anchor point, and then let's augment it in specific ways that allow us to take advantages of what Gen AI can do reliably. And that's an important concept, right? Because Gen AI is not always super reliable, as people know when they try to create various images and other things using the online systems, is that sometimes the result you get is not very lifelike. It's not always realistic. It has kind of some weird corner cases in itself. And so you need to really sanitize the data. That's super important. However, we have seen some modern breakthroughs here. For instance, we just recently posted about our ability to go into very northern, snowy, icy conditions. We did some testing up in northern Michigan right as they were having effectively a blizzard, and we put our car out into multiple feet of snow and hit go. And of course, we don't rely on mapping technology, and so it didn't matter if there were any visible lane lines. The system could understand, hey, these are the boundaries of where I want to drive, and I should probably be roughly in the center. And then of course, if there's an oncoming car, I want to move to the right, exactly as you would if you were driving down a snowy path, or if your truck was driving down a snowy path. And the amazing thing about this story is that we had zero snow data to train on, right? This was something where we had never gathered any data. Instead, what we did was we took the existing data we had from temperate climates and we style transferred on snow. So we drove through the forest, we gathered data, no snow. We took Gen AI, we applied snow to that data and trained the system on it. And then we took the car, took the truck to the snow and hit go. And you know what? It just worked. It was pretty amazing. And so I think that's the direction that this is going to start to go. It's really an all of the above solution. You need the foundation models that are building the general world understanding. You need massive amounts of data in order to mine that data to get good performance. You need the right quality, hand-tuned, hand-labeled, human curated aspects of the data. And then you need to use Gen AI to take it to the next level and do all the things that you can't necessarily cover with corner cases. So it's been quite an evolution, I would say, in summary, but we are finally at a point now where the technology has eclipsed what we consider to be, human capabilities, and it's only going to take off from here.
Well, I like the DoD applications. You mentioned that it's all going into a unified neural net. So any gains made on the military side can also translate into gains on the commercial side. Do you think that it's probably, because I like to think my old Army buddies like HIMMETs, you have wheeled vehicles, tracked vehicles, various types of operating terrain, especially in combat areas where there could be carcasses of exposed vehicles you need to navigate around. Do you think that as you're collecting more weather and like combat conditions, that can also translate into the trucking situation, because drivers are going into natural disasters, hurricanes? Like, is that kind of one of the hidden edges compared to other folks where it's like, I guess I got to put it on like I-80 and pray it doesn't get blown over by wind?
Exactly. So you're exactly on the button there. So all of this is trending toward a convergence of capabilities, and really we see the industrial application, like what we're doing with Atlas and what we're doing in the military context, as a stepping stone towards bigger and perhaps more exciting markets. Right. So when we think about where the technology is going, it is certainly laser focused on the over-the-road long-haul case. That is something that is coming within, I would say, the next year. We wanted to focus on getting the safety case completed for our application in the Permian. We did that. And also something to keep in mind about building the safety case is that it's really a process, right? You have a bunch of claims about the safety of your system, and then you have evidence to back up those claims, and you have data that you collect that proves that actually the truck is safe in all these different scenarios. And you go one by one through all the different categories and all the corner cases and all the things you've experienced and all the things you can imagine experiencing. And you sort of check all the boxes to say, yes, the truck will perform in these conditions. The truck will perform in those conditions. And then you also look at the severity of the outcomes, meaning when the truck does something that is incorrect or somebody else on the roadway does something that's incorrect, what is the severity of the condition that occurs? And that ultimately comes down to speed. There are other factors involved, but you can think of speed as the dominant factor. And that's why long haul trucking has been such a challenge for companies like Kodiak and others who have worked on it, right? You've got Waymos deployed in San Francisco and LA and other places, and they're coming to other cities. And people who experience Waymo love it. They rave about it. It's an amazingly smooth product, but it's still not available to the public in general highway environments. And that's because the speed is a challenge, right? You also have a regulatory question as you move across states and other areas. And so there's a little bit of a headwind that has made it challenging to break into the over-the-road use case. But absolutely everything we're doing in off-road scenarios, in on-road scenarios, for other applications, for other customers, and the deployment that we've gone through, working through that safety case process, is pointing toward over the road. And so we're super excited to bring this technology, all the learnings we have from unstructured, from different diverse weather conditions, and bring that capability to the most robust, safest over the road product that we possibly can. And we're looking to do that in the next couple of years.
And that's one of the big things, over-the-road applications. It's a very sweet spot for me. I used to start in over-the-road OTR at US Express. One of the things I'm thinking about and how I originally heard was a hub and spoke model, because at the time, my limited understanding of autonomous was like, well, they're going to stick on the highways, but when they get in the cities, there's a problem, or they try to get in the warehouse, it's going to be a challenge. I spoke with the folks at Torque last week, and one of the things they were talking about was that they want to go end to end and actually have it drive in the warehouse. So they don't want to have to deal with the autonomous truck port when they're testing in Texas. Is that kind of one of the next levels, or is that something where if I'm like an autonomous truck maker, do I just want to focus on point to point, or do I actually need to navigate around warehouses and stuff? Is there like a holy grail at the moment, or a certain strategy? Because that's my biggest challenge is how are you going to get these things in and out?
It's absolutely the direction that the technology is going. Hands down, it's going end to end, point to point, as opposed to the hub model. If you had asked me 7 years ago, Kodiak was definitely focused on hub to hub. But I think what we've seen, at least in our technology, is that we've been able to bypass those hubs and deliver directly to facilities themselves. So already with our customers that we're working with, we pick up and drop off at their distribution centers, their depots. We have some retail customers like IKEA, where we actually deliver directly to the retail store. So we drive autonomously all the way to the back of the IKEA, where the truck is ready to be offloaded. And so that's just a taste of things to come. I do think that the hub model will have a place in the network. There's some advantages that you can gain there, but with every year that passes, I would say the advantage of the hub model is waning. And definitely for most customers, for most trucking companies, they would prefer to deploy a driverless system that can just directly replace the truck model that they have today, which is you pick up at the warehouse, you pick up at the distribution center, you take it to another warehouse or another distribution center, or you pick it up at the depot and you take it directly to a retail facility. And that unlocks all kinds of possibilities, right? Like middle mile applications, like last mile applications. And so this is where the technology is going. I think it's going to be the hub to hub model is a very transient model. I think it's going to go away very quickly. And this is also why at Kodiak, we have not dedicated resources or spent a lot of money on going out and building these bespoke hubs, highway adjacent hubs that ultimately are not going to be part of the business plan going forward. So I completely agree with the past conversation that you had. I think that's the direction that the industry is going. It's certainly the direction that our technology is going. I won't speak for anybody else, but yeah, I think that we're looking past the hub to hub model at this point.
And I had a final related question to operations. I spoke with some folks called Outrider. They have autonomous yard dogs or yard trucks. Depends on the term, the smaller relative of the Class 8, hooking up airlines. So, I mean, live load, live unload applications, an autonomous truck is perfect. Back into the dock, pull out of the dock, point to point. But a lot of trucking companies use a preload drop and hook one because, you can't always figure out when they load it. Is that one of the challenges also in the next few years as we're looking towards this path of commercialization? Or I'm going to ask the robot arm question again. Will there be an autonomous robot arm to connect the airlines and brake lines?
I think that's definitely in the future of the technology. It's not what we're focused on right now. So in our model, we have people at the designated pickup and drop off points who can do the connection of the hoses and the connections to the trailer and handle all of that. So that's really, I would say that's coming. It's certainly something that we're seeing with physical AI in general. Jensen got on stage and talked about all the different industries where robotics are going to have a profound impact on our lives, improve safety, and improve resiliency of the fleets. But it's just not where we're focused on today. And I don't think it's necessarily essential. It's certainly not essential in order to drive efficiency within the freight business. There's a lot of lower hanging fruit, I would say, than just worrying about how to connect and disconnect a trailer. So we're really focused on the driving aspect, which I think is where most of the companies are seeing the biggest need for this tech. But yeah, definitely down the line, that's where it's all going.
I appreciate the candor on that. I'm asking everyone about the robot arm because there was a whole spiel about how you train a generative AI model to operate a very fine tinseled claw. And it was so fascinating that it's one of the little things I'm thinking about. We got a little bit of time. I feel like we could go a whole hour, but just to wrap things up, regulatory stuff moving into 2025, new administration, FMCSA changes, DOT, Department of Highway, the whole shebang. Is there anything that's on your radar right now as we're looking towards these paths to commercialization? Any lingering questions or things that you want to see attention to as we're moving ahead? I'll preface it real quick by Aurora telling the FMCSA, they're suing them, saying that I would like to not have to use triangle traffic cones, for instance, for roadside incidences and stuff. What are some of the things you're thinking about, or is there a wish list in the regulatory agenda to help get us to that starting line for commercial operations?
I would say, well, the one thing we need to solve is the emergency triangle debacle. Of course, that was the proposal and exemption was rejected by the previous administration. That's obviously an impediment to deploying this technology for long haul applications at scale. I mean, there are ways to get around it at small volumes. I do think that with the new administration, all the rhetoric is pointing in the right direction. We're very excited about President Trump and where things are going in terms of autonomy and policy. I think we'll solve the emergency triangle situation. I'm not too worried about that. And more generally, having a federal framework for autonomous deployment at scale is going to be a huge tailwind for our business, right? It's going to encourage investment in the space. It will give people confidence that the technology is poised to take off. It will drive customer adoption. It will drive sentiment toward the technology, that it is safe, that it is ready. And of course, it's still on us to provide the safe and reliable technology. I think that's something we've already proven that we can do. And so we very much look forward to working with the current administration and all the different departments that you mentioned to have or to facilitate a safe, responsible, but more certain rollout of the technology through a federal regulatory framework.
Well, it's super exciting stuff for sure. Don, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's a pleasure getting to not only meet you, but get to catch up in terms of everything that's going on. If folks want to learn more, get in touch, figure out what's going on at Kodiak, what's the best way to get that info?
Definitely follow us on LinkedIn. That's where we post all the latest and greatest stuff. You can hit up our website at kodiak.ai. Very simple. And those are the two main channels, but we're also on X and all of your favorite social media platforms as well.
Perfect, Don. Really appreciate your time as well. A lot of great information, and we'll talk to you soon. I know you guys are working on a lot of stuff, so keep us posted.
2025 is going to be an exciting year. I'm happy to come back anytime.
Thank you so much. That's going to be a wrap for this show. If you're just joining us, we're also on Apple, YouTube, and Spotify. While you're at it, subscribe to the Truck Tech newsletter. I'm going to do write-ups on all my interviews as well to help get the good word out. And you can sign up for it at freightwaves.com/trucktech. That's a wrap for this episode, folks. But don't worry, you got a lot more great stuff coming up. We'll see you again soon.